We're joined tonight by the chair of the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts and a member of the Pennsylvania Historic and Museum Commission, First Lady Susan Corbett. I first met Susan Corbett about a year ago when her husband Tom was running for governor. In the midst of an intense campaign, she met with a group of 6 Cultural Alliance members and staff for over an hour in the Cultural Alliance conference room to discuss in depth Tom Corbett's arts and culture platform. She listened intently and spoke about her own experience as a museum administrator and educator. 3 months later, I met with Mrs. Corbett again, but this time it was as First Lady, and the meeting took place at the governor's residence in Harrisburg. Board member Kim Sayette and I were graciously invited to a private 2-hour meeting. But if you know Kim, you also know that she's no shrinking violet. And within minutes, we were not only talking about how to fulfill the campaign's cultural platform, but we were also recruiting Mrs. Corbett to make arts and culture the central cause of her tenure as First Lady. And fortunately, she has. During last year's legislative session, the governor introduced a budget that needed to cut the state's expenditures from $31 down to $27 million. But fulfilling a campaign promise to support arts and culture, the appropriation to the Council on the Arts was effectively level funded. Later in the legislative session, when lawmakers in the House of Representatives proposed a 70% cut to the arts and culture sector, applying intense political and media pressure, it would have been really easy to acquiesce. But Mrs. Corbett stood her ground, and the original appropriation held up. That's leadership. So please join me in welcoming a leader and a friend, First Lady Susan Corbett.
But I should tell you, I also have a selfish reason for coming. The governor and I recently acquired 2 Airedale puppies who are 4 months old. And for those of you in the audience who are mothers, you'll think back to when a trip to the grocery store by yourself was something like being wined and dined at a 5-star restaurant. So I'm really excited that I had an official reason to get out of the house. And I wanted to compliment you on having an exceptional leader in Tom Kagan and Kim Sayette. I remember well them visiting the residence. In fact, I'm not even sure I had my bags unpacked yet when they showed up on the doorstep to talk to me about the importance of arts and culture in Philadelphia and to the state. So you have a very competent, passionate leader in both Kim and Tom. Tom mentioned a little bit about my background, but I thought I would just introduce myself a bit for those of you who don't know me or don't know how I got to this position, other than marrying Tom Corbett. But I've been on the State Arts Council for 9 years, and so really delighted to be named chair. I also am a newly named commissioner of the Pennsylvania Historic and Museum Commission. I'm a trustee of Carnegie Museums in Pittsburgh, and I also enjoy an ex officio position on the Philadelphia Museum of Art Board. So I can't think of any better way to spend my time than working with these 4 organizations and agencies. But if you step back before that, I was at the Gettysburg Foundation for 5 years, and this was a partnership with the National Park Service, the first of its type in the country. We built a big new museum and visitor center that we designed, raised the money, constructed, and operate for the National Park Service. And I planned the programming, the major donor fundraising, and oversaw special events for that organization. And a step back further, I ran an arts organization in Pittsburgh for 10 years, a literary arts organization, where I got to meet all of the, or many of the authors that I had read and studied when I was an English major in college, which was a little step backwards to when I started college after 10 years of studying piano, and I thought I was going to have a career in performance. Before I met my husband, and I thought he was more fun than practicing in the basement of the music hall. But I grew up in a family where arts and culture were a priority for our family, and I married into a family that was passionate about history. So this organization is so important and is doing such great work that I'm thrilled to be with you this evening. And if I'm so fortunate as to have a legacy as First Lady when my husband finishes his tenure, I hope that I've been able to spend my time and strengthen this important part of living, working, or visiting Pennsylvania. So as Tom mentioned, this spring, the Council on the Arts, and I in particular, were a little shocked when the governor proposed level funding and the legislature slashed it by 70%, and especially because it had already been reduced, funding had been reduced by 40% in the 2 years previous to this one. And so I want to thank all of you, Cultural Alliance and all of its members, who very quickly organized, and you all organized your audiences and lobbied the legislature to restore funding. And that was really a critical move. Without you, it wouldn't have happened. And I also want to acknowledge Philip Horn, the Executive Director of Pennsylvania Council on the Arts, who also organized and got ready to very sort of under the radar lobby, but also to come up with a number of different plans to try to minimize the impact of the funding decrease if we weren't successful in restoring funding. But luckily, it was successful, and I do thank you for your strong advocacy for funding of the Council of the Arts. I'd also like to thank this organization for its efforts to provide solid, reliable data, because that is so necessary to advocating for the arts and planning process for all of the organizations that benefit and belong to this organization. And I understand that tonight you're going to be reviewing some results of the latest cultural survey of this region. And like most things in life, there's good news and bad news. But I want to emphasize the good news and just congratulate all of you for developing an artistic product and education product that is so exceptional that it spurs individuals to increase attendance and to support you financially. And so while we're still kind of reeling from this recession and economic depression, it's good to see, and the government and obviously corporate funding has been reduced. It's really heartfelt to see that individuals have understood that what you do is important, not just to the region, but to them personally. So I'm hoping as First Lady and PCA Chair and PHMC member that I can work with all of you and create a more permanent solution that prevents us from having to go through this annual dance for funding, and that we can strengthen the arts, cultural, and heritage communities and keep them alive and well in Pennsylvania. So I'm going to ask you to help me do that by, first of all, Pennsylvania Council on the Arts is about to start a strategic planning process, and we'll be in Philadelphia. It would be very helpful if you could attend and share your thoughts about what the Council on the Arts, your state agency for the arts, can do beyond funding to strengthen what you do as heads of arts organizations. And for those of you that are involved in heritage organizations, we have all new PHMC commissioners. We're all anxious to get started. And as we're traveling the states, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to visit your site and see what it is that we can do to help you in your task. So thank you again for having me here this evening.